God with us, Kant. And he's writing pretty much like during the time of the American Revolution. So it's pretty interesting to think in those terms. He was from Prussia, I believe, Königsberg. And Immanuel Kant is like the philosopher par excellence. He basically looked at all the ancient philosophers that came before him, medieval philosophers, dealt with all their issues, and then he set the trajectory for the future. And pretty much any future philosopher has to deal with Immanuel Kant if they want to bring up something new or some new idea or flavor of philosophy. Kant, in his personal life, he was a scholar. He would get up in the morning, prep for his classes. He would do a ritual morning walk around the town. He was so precise in his schedule and his walks, people would actually set their clocks by when he walked by their window. I mean, so this guy was on it. He's very precise. And you might say rigid or retentive if you want, but maybe that's the making of this kind of philosophy. And when he approached ethics, he wanted an ethical theory that was not swayed by the emotions or the passions. This is another reason-based ethical theory. But this is reason of the highest order. And part of what qualifies Kant to be able to write an ethic based on reason is two of his major works. One was the Critique of Pure Reason, and the other was the Critique of Practical Reason. And I don't know, if you ever want to really expand your mind, they're about this thick, these companion volumes, and Kant will help you learn how to think correctly, how to use your reason appropriately, what you can use reason for, and what you cannot use it for. Okay, the things that can be known by reason and the things that cannot. But he believed ethics and morality is one of those things that we actually can do by the use of correct and proper reasoning. And it's a pretty straightforward theory. Kant noted that the problems with most of the theories that had come before him were that people weren't really being ethical at all. In fact, when you look at divine command theory, those who do God's will are rewarded. Those who disobey God are punished. And when you ask yourself that question, why do you do what you believe is right? Do you do it because of fear of punishment or hope of reward? If that's what's motivating you to do ethical behavior, Kant would say you're not being ethical at all, you're just being a moral mercenary. You've basically given your allegiance to the highest bidder, and if someone offers you a better reward for doing something naughty, well, you're going to do something naughty because the price is right. So that's a great question to ask yourselves. I mean, think about, this school has a few rules. I mean, not a lot, not like in the good old days when we had real rules at this college. But we still got a few more than society at large. But you ask yourself the question, why do you keep the rules of the school? Is it because you want people to think you're a good person? Are you afraid of the consequences, of the fines, of the shame, of the public humility if you break the rules? I mean, why do you keep them, and why? What's the point? What's the motivating factor? And if it's for hope of reward or fear of punishment, then Kant would say you're not even being an ethical person. Anyone have a comment on that? Do you agree with that? I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. And unfortunately, most people I know, especially most Christians I know, their whole morality is based on this whole idea of what they can get out of it or what they can avoid. I mean, I still remember the day I became a Christian. My mama asked me, I was about 4 years old, and she had read me my bedtime Bible story, and I was about to go off to sleep, and she said, "Freddie, wouldn't you like to go to heaven with Mommy and Daddy and live for eternity in blessedness and joy with the streets of gold and with all the choirs of angels? Or do you want to reject Jesus and burn in the fiery pits of hell for all eternity?" And I said, I want to be with Jesus. I want to be with Mommy and Daddy in the streets of gold. But, I mean, I have no concept of Jesus or love or any of that stuff. It was just one seemed really good and the other seemed really negative, and I wanted the good. But I might as well have been a hedonist. I was going for pleasure, not because I cared anything about Jesus or God or anything like that. So maybe I really didn't become a Christian. Who knows? Kant breaks it down pretty simply. Oh, another factor with Kant is he was kind of raised by, I guess you could call them 18th century holy rollers. And in a sense, they were very charismatic. They were German pietists, and they would like feel things, and the Spirit of God would tell them stuff, and they'd have like words from the Lord and these sorts of things. And I think Kant, in some way, this is my psychological evaluation of Kant, I think he might have been reacting to or trying to compensate, and he didn't want to live a life or of the mind or of ethics and morality on this roller coaster where one day God loved you and everything was great, and the next day God was out to get you. God loves you, he's out to get you. And so you're on this wild emotional roller coaster. So Kant's seeking something that's steady, reasonable, rational, that can appeal to anyone who's willing to do the work. And the first thing he says you have to have is a good will. In fact, Kant goes so far to say, a good will is the only thing that is good in and of itself. Everything else in the world is contingently good. Example, beauty. Beauty could be good or evil. It depends how you use beauty. The same thing with strength. You could use your physical strength to help others or to harm others. Intelligence. You could use your intellect to create new cures or innovations to help society, or you could be an evil genius and use your evil intelligence to hurt other people. But a good will is good in and of itself. And so this is the foundation requirement if you want to do ethics. So what do you guys think goodwill is? I can almost guarantee you your answers will not be correct. This is one of the difficult things about Kant. You almost have to learn, even if you read an English translation of Kant, who wrote in German, he has his own language. In fact, he had to make up a lot of his own words because the German language was not big enough for his mind. So he added a lot of new words to the German vocabulary. But in English, it becomes even more difficult because you have to learn what Kant means when he says certain things. Because when he says goodwill, it's probably not what we mean in general day-to-day conversation. So what would you think if I said you have to have a goodwill? Have a goodwill to one another. What would you think that meant? Correct motivation, right? Correct thinking. Wow, maybe you are a Kantian. Do you have German in your background? Yeah, that might do it. That's exactly what he meant. You have to be thinking correctly. Wow, that's shocking. When I heard this, I thought he meant be kind, look out for other people's needs, be loving. That's what I was thinking a goodwill meant. Have a happier, kind disposition towards others. But he meant that you have pure, practical reason. That's what a goodwill is for Kant. So you have to start with a sound reason, and then you're ready to do ethics. And once you have the sound thinking part down, then you can do the categorical imperative. And the categorical imperative is to will that your maxim be made a universal law. Let me put that in 21st century lingo. When you get in a moral dilemma, you need to ask yourself, would I want all people in all places, at all times, to do, that's your maxim, what I'm about to do. And that's universal. All